So on this video, I'm shooting a very nice cityscape, and there's really just one thing I want to do. I want to create the biggest panorama that I can. So I'm here today and I'm gonna shoot this entire Makati city skyline, and I'm gonna see just how many frames I can do and stitch them on later, and basically just create the biggest or the widest and the highest pixel density panorama I can do of Makati City. Today I'm shooting with my Sony A7RIII, and mounted on it, or maybe the other way around, is the Sony 200 to 600 millimeter, and I have it on my Manfrotto 055 with my Manfrotto 3-way geared head, and I'm using basically the best kind of gear I'd want to be using for such a task like this. I want great resolution, I want good optics, and I need a stable tripod. Plus, this geared head is going to give me a very efficient workflow in making sure that my panorama is kept on axis. Technically, this process could have been done with a much shorter lens, but the point of using a longer lens on this one is to actually zoom in and create more frames to create a bigger file. The process of shooting a panorama is basically taking a photo and panning to one side and making sure that the frames overlap by 1/4 to 1/3 of the frame to make sure that you have detail points to which the next photo would be stitched to. It's very important to make sure that your horizon level is kept the same to make sure that your panorama is seamless. Alright, so I'm back home, and the task to do now is basically to just assemble the panorama. I took 14 vertical images. I could have done more actually and created maybe double this with multiple layers, but the time wasn't really in my hands at the time because the light was drastically changing, and that was actually shot on the night of the big lunar eclipse recently, so I couldn't just spend the entire night just shooting this panorama. So I ended up with a single row of 14 images that we will put together. And conveniently, I just got the Asus Zenbook Pro Duo 15 OLED, which is a beast of a computer. And I'm really curious as to how long it will take for the computer to process the entire panorama. I'm expecting around 400 megapixels in output for this one, and on an older computer it would take 10 or maybe even 30 minutes to do that. But for this one, I expect it to be much faster. After that, the remaining task will be just to dig down deep and check out how detailed this shot will be, and at the same time to clean up some clutter from the shot that might be distracting to the final output. Alright, so what you see on my screen right now, there's a tiny box with my face on it on the upper right, but I put that there so you can see what I do on the computer. Below that is a projection of the secondary screen that I have, and it is showing the Adobe control panel. So everything I do there you can also see on the top right corner. But mainly on the screen, what you can see are the images that I have, of course, on Adobe Lightroom. So these are the 14 images that I created using the Sony A7RIII and the 200 to 600 millimeter telephoto lens. And what we're gonna do now is basically just select all of them and use photo merge. And this is a very simple process actually. If you don't know yet, this is how you assemble your panoramas. It's very easy for as long as you did the process of shooting right. And that means basically doing it properly aligned and having a bit of overlap to tell the computer where the photo ends and where the next one starts. So we're gonna click on Panorama. And it's already showing us a preview of this projection, which is the perspective projection. We chose a perspective projection because we worked quite a bit to keep the verticals aligned and for there to be less vertical distortion or perspective distortion. So that's what it's doing now, and because of that, and also because we did quite a bit of a turn that was around 35 to 45 degrees to the right, there is still a bit of distortion, and that's why you can see some white areas right here. But we're not gonna lose that. Instead, we're gonna tell the computer to make up for it and basically recreate whatever was lost. So we choose fill edges, and yeah, that's it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna time everything. As I press merge right here, I will also start my watch. And there we go, it's already happening. And maybe while I do have a couple of minutes, let me tell you the features of this amazing new laptop. Of course, before this, I was using the Zenbook Duo, the first generation Zenbook Duo. So that also had a ScreenPad Plus, or the secondary screen right here. But what it didn't have was the main screen as a touch screen. At the same time, this is a 4K OLED screen, so that's amazing. This is a Core i7 with an RTX 3070 with 32 gigs of RAM and so much more. I'm running out of breath just trying to say all the specs. But basically, for me, it's really a very powerful computer. At the same time, it has all the features for efficiency that I need. Of course, we have the keyboard here, we have the trackpad here, and everything else was created for full control because it's also compatible with the Asus pen. So this pen is basically going to do all the local and minute adjustments that I would need. And the screen being a touch screen, an OLED touchscreen, it's going to be very easy to navigate throughout the frame. Of course, as you already saw in the preview, we're going to come up with quite a long panorama. And at the end of this process, what we're going to do is really take a peek at the details and at the same time also clean out some clutter before I export the entire photo. Nicco here from the future doing voiceover, and to be perfectly honest, at this point, I was contemplating whether to cut the recording because it was taking a bit long, not really hiding the process, but the video was getting boring. Thankfully, it finished right about here. Alright, so that was 2 minutes and 43 seconds for me, and thus we have the output. Yeah, so what Lightroom does is actually it's giving us a preview of everything. But when we click zoom and I set it to 1:1 or 100%, it's going to give us all the details. So you can see just how detailed this is turning out to be. And we can already see the resulting resolution. It's 42,152 by 9,458. Gosh, okay. Alright, and I'm gonna do minor edits right here. I just want to balance out the luminosity on this part. And obviously that's not what I aim to do. And there's also a relatively dark patch in this area. We want to invert that and give it a bit of boost in terms of luminosity, but not too much. We don't want there to seemingly have a spotlight. We want everything as seamless as possible. Yep, so we do have a lot of clipping highlights. I do leave some of them there because I want the city to be really bright. So we kind of have to find that balance. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is export it over to Photoshop. And I'm gonna export this and name it as 400 MP demo. Image format is TIFF, color space sRGB, 16-bit. Alright, so now we're on Adobe Photoshop. As you can see on the main screen, you see the panorama. Below my face, you can see the ScreenPad Plus. And you can still see the Adobe control panel, which is something we're going to try and use right now. I'm just going to use it to zoom in to show you what I mean. But ultimately, what I love to do with the pen is to actually navigate with it. I have my left hand on the space bar. And if you know Photoshop, you know that when you use the space bar, you're using it to grab the pavement. And so when I use the pen while holding the space bar, I can actually navigate. So this view is actually at 33%. Let me just show you what 100% looks like. There we go. So that's 100%. And it's gonna take me a while to actually clean out everything that has to be cleaned out here, because, well, this is quite a lot in terms of details, but I do want to show you what I usually do. And number one is I clean out all the distracting details or the unwanted details. Usually it's the glaring orbs of light. Usually I take these out. I can show you that. But very simply, this one is easily removable. I'm using a heal tool. And as you can see, Photoshop is doing its part. And it's virtually gone. And these ones usually take a bit more precision. But let's see what it's going to do. When I shoot cityscapes and I'm doing cleanups like these, I usually don't mind seeing a bit of mosaicing in terms of the patches where I clean up, because what matters to me are the distracting highlights that these cranes create. And you can see, this is what I mean by the mosaicing, and you can see there are jagged parts right there. But when you look at it from the full perspective, unless again you're gonna print this for a mural, which is, I'm gonna edit that in a separate private manner, but generally if you're not really printing it that big, this won't be seen anymore. And an alternative you have is actually to use this tool, this clone stamp tool, and actually just copy the details from this part to this part and just use it as a graft rather. And the goal for me right here is just really to take out the distracting rays left by the orbs. There we go. I don't want to dig too deep right there because as you can see, it's barely visible. So another way you can navigate with the screen is actually with two fingers. And so yeah, this is going to be another one that I will be working on. But generally, another thing you should be keeping an eye on are sensor dusts. And I do admit that I haven't had my camera cleaned in a while because of the pandemic. So I have to do the cleaning manually in post. And these are only visible in blank areas anyway. But be sure that before you export your photo, or before you print your photo, or before you post your photo on social media, you take those out. So I'm not gonna finish the entire process on camera because that's gonna take a while. I should have done a live stream if I'm gonna do that. But yeah, I'm really just showing you guys the process from shooting all the way to cleaning up your panorama, no matter what size it ends up to be. So there, so yeah, I'm really loving the details on this shot. Because even when we are at 100%, I can barely see any noise. So last thing I'm gonna do is to export the photo and save it. Be sure to save a master file, which is your main file at fullest resolution. And this will turn out to be a 400 megapixel image that I can crop and resize anytime for whatever use there may be. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed as you joined me in this entire process of creating that image. Also enjoyed being with this guy, and I really did try to show you guys the entire process of pre-conceptualizing and shooting and editing that photo. And I do quite have to commend the computer I'm using right now because it did very, very well in terms of processing and allowing me to do my manual edits. But yeah, if you have any questions, don't forget to leave them down below. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do, and share this video with your friends. And I'll be posting the final image on my Instagram very soon, probably as a panorama in multiple images on a carousel, so you can see the seamless transition from one photo to the other. But yeah, if you haven't, follow me on Instagram at Nicco Valenzuela, and you will see the final output of what we did today. Thanks for watching, guys.